Welcome to the Creative Q briefing on cognitive architecture. Protocol initiated.
We are, at this moment, saturated. Absolutely saturated with AI-generated noise.
That's a strong way to start. Noise.
It's the only accurate term. We are in what many are calling the fourth industrial revolution. But to see this as purely a technological shift is, well, it's a fundamental misreading of the strategic landscape.
Okay, so if it's not just about technology, what is it? Because it feels like a crisis of relevance for a lot of people.
Yeah.
What is my job going to be in 5 years?
It is a crisis, but it's a crisis of differentiation. That's the key.
A crisis of differentiation.
Think about it. For decades, the goal was efficiency, algorithmic efficiency. Who could process the data fastest? Who could automate the workflow? That was the competitive advantage.
Right.
But now, that's a commodity. AI has made that level of efficiency accessible to everyone. It's democratized. The ability to generate average-tier content, to execute linear tasks that can now happen at a scale that is, for all practical purposes, infinite.
So if everyone has a supercomputer in their pocket or on their desktop that can write a decent email or code a simple website or analyze a spreadsheet in, I don't know, seconds,
Then doing those things is no longer special.
it's just the baseline, the table stakes.
Precisely. And this is the core of our briefing today. When the cost of average output plummets to zero, the value of unique, nonlinear insight doesn't just go up a little, it skyrockets.
It becomes everything.
It becomes an only thing. And this brings us to a set of what we call universal principles. The argument is that in this AI-saturated market, something called organic creative intelligence isn't just a nice-to-have skill for the marketing department.
Okay.
It becomes the only remaining sustainable competitive advantage.
Organic creative intelligence. I like the sound of that. It feels premium. Like the difference between organic food and, processed cheese.
That's a surprisingly fitting analogy, actually. It is the one asset that cannot be replicated by a predictive model because it is not predictive. It's generative in the truest sense of the word.
So how do we harness it? I mean, it feels
Yeah.
like we need a complete overhaul of how we think about, well, everything. Our companies, our teams, our own minds.
That's it, exactly. We have to start talking about cognitive architecture, the design of thought itself.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Because when I hear creative intelligence, my mind immediately goes to, artists, painters, musicians. Maybe that really eccentric creative director who wears a scarf indoors in August.
And that is the first and most critical myth we have to dismantle.
That creativity is about art.
Yes, we are not here today to discuss artistic indulgence. We're not talking about composing a symphony or painting a masterpiece, though those are perfectly valid expressions of this faculty. We are discussing creativity as organizational law.
Organizational law. Okay, that has a much more serious weight to it than, say, a brainstorming session with sticky notes and beanbag chairs.
It's a matter of survival. It's fundamental. And we need to view this through the lens of market wisdom, which points to a concept called organizational entropy.
Entropy. Okay, you're taking me back to my high school physics class now. That's the second law of thermodynamics, right? The idea that any closed system naturally moves toward disorder.
Exactly. It's the natural tendency of any system to decline into inert uniformity, into sameness, into irrelevance. Energy dissipates, things fall apart. Now, apply that universal law to a corporation.
So a corporation is a closed system. Is that the idea?
It becomes one if it stops importing new energy. And in a corporate system, that new divergent energy is creativity. Without a constant injection of new ideas, new ways of seeing, the organization inevitably, and I mean inevitably, slides into entropy.
Becomes static.
It becomes a static entity in a dynamic world. It just keeps doing the same thing it's always done, maybe a little more efficiently each year, while the entire landscape around it shifts.
That's a terrifying thought, the idea that you can be optimizing your way into oblivion.
It's not just a thought. It's what's happening to most companies right now.
Wow.
They are meticulously, efficiently rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. They're optimizing the obsolete.
So what's the mandate then? For the CEO, the HR director, the person listening to this right now, who is in charge of strategy.
The mandate is to recognize a critical and growing skill gap. For the last century, we've been optimizing for IQ, raw intelligence.
Can you solve the logic puzzle? Can you do the math?
Yes. And then more recently, maybe in the last 20 years, we started optimizing for EQ, emotional intelligence.
Which is important, of course.
Yeah.
You don't want a brilliant jerk who poisons the company culture.
True, it was a necessary evolution. But the primary metric for leadership and frankly for survival in the year 2026 and beyond is the CQ.
The creative quotient.
The creative quotient. It's not some vague, unmeasurable quality. It is a measurable social process. It is the engineered ability to engage in a specific cognitive architecture that allows an organization to bridge the gap between what is the current reality and what ought to be the future possibility.
So it's the engine of change.
It's the engine that overcomes the organization's own immune system.
The immune system of the status quo. I love that phrasing. Because every organization has one, doesn't it? The minute you try to introduce something new, the antibodies come out.
They do. You hear it all the time. That's not how we do things here.
Or, we tried something like that back in 2018 and it was a disaster.
Exactly. That resistance, that is the entropy. The CQ is the vital energy required to overcome that inertia. If an organization cannot generate, identify, and execute on new ideas, it is, in a very real sense, in violation of the laws of market survival.
I'll see.
So this brings us to the core mechanics.
Okay, so if we accept the premise that CQ is the new IQ, that it's this vital organizational law, how do we actually get it? Because, I think most people have this idea that you're either born creative or you're not.
The muse.
Yeah, the muse. You sit around and you wait for a lightning bolt of inspiration to strike you.
And that is, without a doubt, the most dangerous and costly fallacy in modern business, the idea of the spark. This romanticized notion that a creative idea is some kind of magical event, a visitation from a deity that strikes without warning.
I have to admit, I'm guilty of that myself. I wait for inspiration. It usually seems to hit me in the shower or, at 2 in the morning when I'm trying to fall asleep.
And there is a very clear biological reason for that, which we will deconstruct later. But the fundamental premise that it's magic.
Yeah.
No. An idea is the output of a specific, repeatable, and most importantly, engineerable cognitive architecture.
Engineerable.
Yes. We have to completely reframe our understanding of the human brain. For centuries, we've viewed it as a storage device.
Like a hard drive. You put information in, you retrieve it later.
That's a profoundly limited view. A more accurate model, for our purposes, is to see the brain as a conceptual accelerator.
A conceptual accelerator.
Its primary function, when operating at an elite level, is not to store data, but to take existing data points, memories, facts, sensory inputs, patterns, and accelerate them into new, novel configurations. To smash them together to create something that didn't exist before.
And this is a biological reality.
It is. We all share the same degree of fundamental creative power because we are all working with the same basic hardware. It's grounded in ordinary human abilities, not supernatural gifts.
So my brain, your brain, the brain of a Nobel Prize winner biologically, we're all working with more or less the same kit. The same raw materials.
Roughly, yes. The difference between a stagnant mind and an innovative one isn't the biological hardware. It's the software. It's the operating system. It is the methodology of acceleration that's being run.
Okay, so let's get into that software. How do we program this accelerator? How does it actually work?
According to universal frameworks of cognition, it operates in a dual-phase mode. Two distinct and in many ways opposing modes of operation. And understanding the separation between these two phases is the difference between amateur brainstorming, which is frankly a waste of everyone's time, and professional high-stakes innovation.
Dual phase. 2 modes. What are they?
Phase 1 is what we call divergent fluidity.
Divergent fluidity.
This is the engine of optionality. Its sole purpose is to generate massive quantities of options. In this phase, the operational protocol is blind variation.
Blind variation. Okay, that sounds a bit random.
It is. It's a chaotic, non-judgmental search for novelty. We are generating as many potential solutions or ideas as possible, but, and this is the crucial part, we do it without the filter of feasibility, without judgment.
So you don't care if the ideas are good or bad or practical or insane at this stage?
You cannot care. The moment you start judging, you shut down the engine. To enter this state, you have to achieve a kind of cognitive loosening. You have to intentionally suspend the brain's executive function. You know that little voice in your head, the inner critic?
Oh, I know that voice very well. It's loud. It's usually shouting at me before I even finish having the thought, that'll never work, that's too expensive, or what will people think?
That is the voice of premature convergence. In the divergent phase, you must silence that voice. The goal is to drift into what's called the adjacent possible. It is about volume above all else. It's about wildness.
Okay, I get that, but you can't run a business on wild ideas alone. If I just spend my entire day generating chaotic options, I'm not innovating, I'm just daydreaming. I'm not delivering anything.
Precisely. And this is where so many creative initiatives fail. Divergent fluidity on its own is just noise. It's chaos without purpose.
Yeah.
Which brings us necessarily to the second phase, Convergent Precision.
So if divergence is the gas pedal, this is the brake.
It's the steering wheel and the high-performance braking system and the GPS. This is the phase of selective retention. This is where we deliberately and ruthlessly apply the strategic filters. We take that chaotic mass of raw novelty that we generated in Figure 1, and we begin to refine it for a return on investment.
This is where reality comes back into the room.
Yes, the budget, the timeline, the brand identity, the laws of physics, all the constraints that we intentionally ignored before are now brought to bear.
And you're saying the real skill is being able to switch between these two.
The high-level professional skill, the core competency we must map for in our talent, is the cognitive agility to shift cleanly and intentionally between these two modes. And here's the tragedy we see in most organizations. Individuals and even entire teams are stuck in one mode.
Oh, I can definitely see that. I know people who are pure divergence, the idea machines.
We call them the dreamers. They exhibit high divergent fluidity but have almost zero convergent precision. They can generate endless fascinating ideas. They'll start a dozen new projects a month, but they never deliver any actual value.
They're exhausting to work with because nothing ever lands. It's just a constant churn of novelty.
A churn of novelty,
Yeah.
exactly. And then you have the opposite archetype.
The executors.
The executors. Extremely high convergent precision, but zero divergent fluidity. These are the people who are incredibly efficient at doing the wrong thing, or more commonly, the obsolete thing. They will optimize a process that shouldn't even exist anymore, down to the 10th of a decimal point.
These are the people who say no before you've even finished pitching the idea, the "we can't do that" people.
Yes. Their filter is permanently on. And so the master architect of an organization, the true talent architect, needs to assess their people not on vague terms like creative, but on 3 measurable KPIs: fluency, flexibility, and originality.
Okay, let's break those down. What's fluency?
Fluency is simply the speed of thought. It's the rate of idea generation. In a 5-minute divergent sprint, can you generate 50 potential uses for a paperclip, or can you only come up with 5? It's about sheer quantity.
Speed and volume. Got it.
Then there's flexibility. This is the ability to shift cognitive categories. If we're trying to solve a customer service problem, are all your ideas variations on a single theme, like give a refund? Or can you fluidly move from a financial solution to a psychological one, to a technological one, to a process-based one? It's about jumping tracks.
So not getting stuck in one way of thinking.
Yeah.
And originality.
Originality is the statistical uniqueness of the output. When you look at the total pool of ideas generated, are yours clustered in the center with everyone else's, or are you finding the true outliers, the ideas that make everyone else in the room pause for a second?
This makes a lot of sense, but it also sounds incredibly demanding. To switch your brain from this wide-open, anything is possible chaos mode to this laser-focused, is this profitable sniper mode, that's a huge cognitive load.
It is, and the strategic principles of cognition are very clear on this. The brain operates most efficiently when it is monotasking within a specific mode. The moment you try to be divergent and convergent simultaneously generating an idea while judging it, you are effectively driving with the brakes on.
Driving with the brakes on. That is a perfect metaphor. That's exactly what it feels like. You're not moving forward, you're just creating a lot of heat and friction and smoke.
And this is precisely why the typical corporate brainstorming session is a complete failure. It's not work, it's theater, it's performative innovation.
Oh, you don't have to tell me. It's the worst kind of meeting. You get 10 people in a room, someone tentatively throws out a half-formed idea, and before they're done, Dave from accounting says, "We looked into that. The margins aren't there."
And that single comment, that one premature application of the convergent filter, doesn't just kill that one idea, it kills the entire session. It sends a powerful signal to the semantic network of every person in that room that vulnerability is not safe.
The hatching phase is aborted.
Instantly. Everyone immediately retreats to safe, boring, incremental ideas that they know Dave from accounting will approve of. The potential for a breakthrough dies.
So how do you fix it? I mean, short of telling Dave not to come to the meeting.
You could do that. But a more systematic solution is to structure the time. You enforce a strict temporal separation of the phases. You, as the facilitator, say, for the next 20 minutes, judgment is illegal. The only metric is quantity. There are no bad ideas. You actively invite and protect the chaos.
You create a sanctuary for the divergent phase.
A sanctuary, yes. And only after that phase is complete, when the whiteboards are filled with wild ideas, do you consciously switch gears. It must be a ritualized act. You say, okay, phase 1 is complete. We are now entering the convergent phase. Now we bring Dave back into the room. Now and only now do we apply the constraints.
It sounds so simple when you lay it out like that, but I almost never see it happen in practice.
Simple in theory requires discipline in practice. But there's one more critical constraint we have to discuss. It's a foundational principle. You cannot accelerate a vacuum.
What do you mean by that?
The conceptual accelerator, powerful as it is, requires fuel. And that fuel is what we call knowledge stocks. This is a critical concept from the universal frameworks of cognition.
You can't connect dots that you don't possess in the first place.
You cannot. You can't make a gourmet meal from an empty pantry. The brain requires a deep, diverse reservoir of information, of experiences, of expertise, of seemingly random facts to fuel the process. This is why the most valuable creative asset isn't the specialist with deep knowledge in one narrow field.
It's the generalist.
It's the T-shaped professional, someone with deep expertise in one core domain, but with broad, curious knowledge across many, many others. They have the necessary stock of disparate concepts required for the synthesis to occur.
Understood.
And this brings us to the actual mechanism of the aha moment, the way these ideas are formed.
Right, because having the dots, the knowledge stocks, is one thing. But drawing the line between two dots that no one else has connected, that's the real magic, isn't it?
It is the mechanism of synthesis.
Yeah.
And it operates on what we call the semantic network.
The semantic network. It sounds like a computer network, like the brain's internal internet.
That's a very accurate way to think about it. Information in the brain isn't stored in neat, isolated folders like on a computer. It's stored in a vast, interconnected web of associations. And high-level thinkers, what we call master architects, utilize a specific protocol to navigate this web. It's called deep associative search.
Deep associative search.
This is the cognitive ability to form connections, to build bridges between very distant conceptual nodes in that network. Let me give you a very concrete example. A low-level creative thinker connects concepts that are close neighbors.
Okay.
So if they're tasked with improving customer service in a retail store, they'll look for solutions in adjacent fields. They might look at fine dining or luxury hospitality.
That makes sense. Hotels are great at service, so let's see what we can learn from them.
It's perfectly logical. It's also a close neighbor. The connection is obvious, and so the resulting innovation is almost always incremental. You get a slightly nicer waiting area or a more polite script for your employees.
You get a 10% improvement.
Exactly. Now, a high-level creative thinker, someone practicing deep associative search, looks at the problem of customer service, and they search for solutions in a completely unrelated domain. They might look at, say, thermodynamics.
Thermodynamics. How on earth do you connect customer service and thermodynamics?
They might ask a different kind of question, not how can we be nicer, but how does a system under pressure regulate itself? How does heat dissipate in a closed system? Can we design a process that allows customer anger, a form of social energy, to dissipate harmlessly using the same principles of variable distribution?
Wow. Okay. That's a leap. A huge leap.
But that is the power of the analogy and the metaphor. These are not just literary devices. They are fundamental tools of cognition. They allow us to import a proven functional framework from a source domain, like physics, and apply it to a dysfunctional target domain, like human relations. This is the essence of a universal framework. The brain is constantly scanning for these structural similarities.
And when it finds one, that's the eureka moment.
That is the architecture of the aha. It's the sudden, satisfying click of a structural gap being bridged. But again, and I cannot stress this enough, you cannot make that leap if your knowledge stocks are impoverished. If you know nothing about thermodynamics, you cannot use it as a metaphor.
This is the ultimate justification for curiosity, for reading widely, for learning things that have no immediate application to your job.
It is the most important form of R&D an individual can do. If you are a leader in finance and you only read finance journals, your semantic network is a closed loop. It's an echo chamber. You are just recycling the same tired ideas and metaphors as every single one of your competitors.
You're all drinking from the same stagnant pond.
Precisely. You must read about biology, you must study military history, you must understand the principles of musical composition or the engineering of ancient aqueducts. You have to fill the reservoir with diverse, seemingly unrelated nodes so that when the conceptual accelerator spins up, it has interesting things to collide with.
I love that. It makes me feel much better about my habit of falling down weird history rabbit holes when I should be looking at quarterly reports.
That's not procrastination, it's strategic knowledge acquisition.
So we have the stocks, we have the network, but let's go back to that eureka moment. You said earlier that it isn't actually sudden, but it really feels sudden. It feels like a flash of insight out of nowhere.
The final realization feels sudden. The underlying process is anything but. That feeling of sudden insight is the culmination of a crucial and mostly invisible cognitive phase known as incubation.
Incubation. Like an egg. It needs time and warmth to develop.
Exactly. When we analyze the workflow of elite problem solvers across disciplines, a clear pattern emerges. First, they engage in deep immersion. They gather the data, they fill their knowledge stocks. Then, they attempt to solve the problem head-on using focused, linear, conscious logic.
The grind. They brute force it.
They grind. They push their conscious mind to its absolute limit. And for truly complex problems, they almost always hit a wall. They get stuck. The linear approach fails. And then, and this is the most important step in the entire process, they disengage.
They give up.
No, they strategically walk away. This initiates the hatching phase. It's a necessary period where the conscious, analytical mind relinquishes control of the problem. You see, your conscious working memory, the part of your brain you think of as you, is actually a terrible processor. It's a bottleneck.
A bottleneck.
A severe one. It can only hold, on average, between 4 and 7 chunks of information at any one time.
That explains why I can never remember a phone number if someone starts talking to me while I'm trying to memorize it.
Exactly. It gets flushed out immediately. But your subconscious processor, it's a supercomputer. It has massive parallel processing capability. It can juggle hundreds of variables simultaneously. When you walk away from the problem, when you go for a run or take a shower or go to sleep, you are essentially handing the problem file over from the tiny, overworked conscious mind to the massive, powerful subconscious.
You're letting the background processor run the program.
And that is when the deep associative search really happens. The subconscious mind doesn't respect the neat categorical boundaries that the conscious mind does. It starts making those wild, distant connections. And then, when a viable solution pathway has been formed, it bubbles up to the conscious mind. Eureka! It feels sudden, but the work has been happening all along, just below the surface.
But herein lies the massive problem with the modern work environment, isn't it? Try telling your boss, I'm not staring out the window, I'm incubating.
I'm not taking a nap. I am strategically engaging my subconscious processor for a high-value, deep associative search.
Exactly. In our culture of constant productivity, of being busy, that just looks like slacking off. It looks like wasted time.
And that is the central tragedy. The modern corporate environment, with its back-to-back meetings and constant demand for immediate linear output, is almost perfectly designed to destroy this cognitive architecture. We fill every second of an employee's day with work, and in doing so, we systematically eliminate the possibility of incubation.
We're forcing our teams to stay in the shallow end of the semantic network. We're only letting them use the bottleneck processor.
We are paying for the whole brain, but only using the weakest part of it. We are killing our most valuable, high-potential solutions in the womb. This is the very definition of organizational entropy in action.
Acknowledged.
Now, this extends beyond the individual.
Right. We've been talking about the brain as if it's in a vat somewhere, but ideas don't happen in a vacuum. We work in teams.
We do. And an idea rarely emerges fully formed from a single mind. It arises from synergy. This is why we say creativity is a measurable social process. It requires the active interaction of 4 distinct types of capital.
4 capitals. Okay, let's list them.
First, and perhaps most important, is social capital.
Social capital. So basically how well everyone gets along.
It's deeper than that. It's the network of trust. In a high-trust environment, ideas can travel at the speed of light. If I trust you completely, I can share a fragile, half-formed, potentially stupid idea with you, knowing that you won't crush it to make yourself look smarter.
You'll plus it. You'll add to it. The yes and principle.
Exactly. But in a low-trust, politically charged environment, ideas travel through molasses. I hoard my best ideas because I'm afraid you'll steal them for your own promotion. Or I polish my idea until it's perfectly safe and boring because I'm afraid you'll mock it if it has any flaws.
So a lack of trust severs the network.
It kills it dead. Then you have cultural capital. This is the shared language, the shared values, the shared understanding of what good even looks like for the organization. Without it, we're all speaking different languages.
Okay, so social, cultural, what's next?
Human capital, which is what we've been discussing. The individual skills, the knowledge stocks, the CQ of each person on the team. And finally, and this is where most organizations fail, institutional capital.
That sounds like the formal structures.
It is the structural support. Does the organization have a defined pathway to catch, nurture, and fund a new idea? Or is there a bureaucratic immune system designed to attack and destroy anything newer and unfamiliar? We see this happen constantly. A team gets into a state of flow, they generate a brilliant divergent solution, and then it has to go to the quarterly innovation approval committee.
The place where good ideas go to die.
Usually it's a group of executives who are not part of the creative process, who don't understand the context, and whose primary personal KPI is avoiding risk. And so the idea, full of potential but also of uncertainty, is killed in favor of the safe, predictable, and ultimately irrelevant option.
So the semantic network isn't just inside my skull. The true network is the collective intelligence of the team. And it's either enabled or disabled by the organization's structure.
Precisely. When we talk about engineering a creative cube, we're talking about designing a specific node in the organization where all four of these capitals are intentionally brought together and amplified.
This leads us perfectly into the macro view. We need to talk about organizational law, about actively engineering the entire environment. Because if the brain is an accelerator and the team is a network, then the company's primary job becomes building the ecosystem where this can actually happen.
The leader is not the source of ideas. The leader is the gardener of the ecosystem.
The gardener. I like that so much more than the general or the commander.
The commander mindset is a relic of a predictable industrial age. In this new landscape, the primary enemy of the ecosystem is standardization and conformism. Traditional management structures, born of the second and third industrial revolutions, were designed for one purpose: to reduce variance.
And that makes perfect sense if you're running a factory. You want every car that comes off the assembly line to be identical to the last one. Variance is a defect.
Correct. If you are building widgets in 1950, variance is your enemy. But in 2026, if you are trying to build the future, innovation is variance. It is a deviation from the norm. Therefore, if your organizational operating system is designed to kill variance, it is, by definition, designed to kill innovation.
So we have this fundamental conflict. The business needs operational efficiency, which relies on standardization, but it also desperately needs innovation, which relies on variance. How do you possibly reconcile those two opposing forces?
You don't try to make one system do both things. You architect a dual operating system for the organization. You have the fortress and you have the lab.
Focus in the lab.
The fortress is the core business. It's built for efficiency, for predictability, for minimizing risk. It protects the current revenue streams. The lab, the creative cube, is built for the opposite. It's designed to maximize learning, maximize risk-taking, and it must tolerate inefficiency and failure in the pursuit of a breakthrough.
And HR's job is to figure out who belongs in which building.
HR's job needs to evolve from being an administrative function to being the architecture of talent. This is strategic human resource management.
You made a bold claim earlier. You said the job description is dead.
It is an artifact from a static world where a role today was the same as the role tomorrow. In a fluid, dynamic environment, we must move away from rigid job descriptions and toward competency mapping.
So we're mapping people, not positions.
We are mapping cognitive profiles. We need to understand the creative potential of our talent. We need to know who has high problem-solving agility, who excels at navigating the semantic network.
So instead of hiring a senior marketing manager, I'm hiring. What am I hiring?
You're hiring a cognitive profile to balance your team's existing portfolio. For example, maybe your team is brilliant at divergent fluidity. They have a million incredible ideas. But they are chronically low in convergent precision. They never finish anything.
They can't ship.
They can't ship. So the worst thing you could do is hire another creative person who is just like them. You'd be compounding the imbalance. It's like adding more gasoline to a car that has no steering wheel.
You need to hire a filter. Someone who brings that convergent discipline.
Exactly. You need someone who respects the divergent process, but whose core competency is to take that chaos and crystallize it into value. We need to think in terms of role architectures that are fluid and complementary.
And for any of this to work, for people to be divergent, to share fragile ideas, they have to feel safe. We hear the term psychological safety thrown around a lot.
We do, but it is one of the most misunderstood concepts in business today. It is critical that we do not mistake psychological safety for comfort or just being nice.
It's not about singing Kumbaya and avoiding difficult conversations.
Not at all. Psychological safety is a hard-edged strategic principle for risk mitigation. It comes down to pure biology. If a member of your team fears punishment, ridicule, or a loss of status for suggesting a divergent idea, their amygdala activates.
That's the lizard brain, a fight-or-flight response.
It is. Their brain immediately shifts from a creative, open state into a defensive survival mode. And when the amygdala is screaming threat, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of complex problem solving, the home of the conceptual accelerator, shuts down. I mean that quite literally. Blood flow is redirected. You have, in effect, temporarily lobotomized your workforce through fear.
So if I'm a leader in a meeting and I'm aggressively shooting down ideas, I'm not just being tough. I'm actively making my team less intelligent in that moment.
Measurably less intelligent. You cannot command a brain to be creative while simultaneously threatening its survival. It is a biological impossibility.
Clarify.
It leads us to the final part of this briefing, the application.
The how.
The how. Because we have established the strategic necessity of organic intelligence, we have deconstructed the mechanics of the conceptual accelerator and the semantic networks that are required for insight.
We know the theory.
And that's the point. Understanding the why of the creative spark is now open knowledge. It is available to anyone who wants to learn the universal principles. You can go ask a generative AI to define psychological safety or the divergent phase, and it will write you a perfectly adequate, accurate paragraph.
But knowing the path is not the same as walking the path.
Precisely. The methodology for engineering these states, for building this architecture within a specific, complex, messy human team with its own unique politics and history, that is an entirely different matter.
You can't just send out a memo that says, everyone, please start incubating ideas and engaging in deep associative search.
Relax. You cannot. You cannot simply command a team to be creative any more than you can command a seed to grow. You have to create the conditions for growth. You must design the audio architecture, the visual cues. You must install the cognitive rituals that trigger these states of mind.
And this is where the proprietary solution comes in. This is the creative cube.
This is what we mean by engineering. At Creative Cube Greece, we position the Creative Cube not merely as a well-designed physical space, but as a cognitive gym.
A cognitive gym.
You would not expect an Olympic athlete to train for the gold medal without a world-class facility, without specialized equipment, without expert coaching. Why then do we expect our mental athletes, our innovators, our strategists to achieve breakthroughs in hostile, poorly designed cognitive environments?
It's a fully integrated system.
It is a proprietary engineering service. We have the methodology to audit an organization's current level of entropy. We have the diagnostic tools to map the creative quotient of your specific workforce. We have the proven ability to design and install the cognitive rituals that bridge the gap between your social capital and your institutional capital. This is the work of the master architect.
So if a company leader is listening to this right now, and they're having that sinking feeling of recognition, my God, we're operating in a state of high entropy. What's the next step?
We have provided the cognitive map in this briefing. But to build the vehicle that can navigate that map, you require the master architect, Valeja Molona and the Creative Cube team. We don't just teach the theory of creativity. We come in and we install the operating system.
You build the engine.
We engineer the flow state. We conduct the deep associative search on behalf of your organizational challenges. The gap between knowing that you need to be creative to survive and actually producing breakthrough innovation on demand. That gap is where most companies die. We are the bridge across that gap.
That's a powerful place to end. It reframes this entire conversation. It's not about creativity being a soft skill. It's about it being a structural, architectural necessity.
In a world of artificial answers, the only value lies in the human question. End of briefing.
Session concluded.